Hey guys, welcome to Home Sweet Homeschool. If you're new here, my name is Ashley and I'm a homeschooling mom to one. And in today's video, I'm participating in a collab hosted by Ingrid from the Ingrid Chronicles. And we are sharing ways to make storytime interactive. Now, if you're like me, you love storytime. You love to read books to your kids. I loved it as a teacher. That was one of my favorite times of day. During kindergarten is when I got to read stories. And I also love doing read alouds with my son. But sometimes stories can be boring, especially if you don't know exactly what to do or if you're not great at reading things aloud. So I'm going to share some things that I learned as a teacher and that I also use as a parent that may make story time a little bit more fun for you and your kiddos. So the first thing I always recommend is that you read the book first yourself. You want to read it so that you know what the story's about. You can go ahead and pull out vocabulary. You can kind of see what your kids may or may not understand. So you want to read the book yourself first before you read it to your kiddos. That's always my first recommendation. So we're going to talk about what you can do for lower elementary and upper elementary to make those read alouds a little bit more fun. The first thing you're going to do for both ages is you're going to make sure that you build their background knowledge. It's really important that you do this step because a lot of times kids don't understand or they miss things in a book because they just don't have the background knowledge needed to be able to understand the story. So if you're reading the book like The Very Hungry Caterpillar, you may want to build background knowledge on the life cycle of a butterfly. If you're reading The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, you may want to build background knowledge on windmills because kids don't naturally just know those things. They have to be taught those things, and you can go ahead and see what they already know, and then you can kind of fill in the gaps. And you can do these things just by having conversations with your kiddos, showing them YouTube videos on certain things so that you're building up their background knowledge. You can do this for chapter books too. If you know what the chapter book's about, go ahead and figure out what you need to introduce to your kiddos beforehand. It could be finding the location of where the book takes place. So finding it on a globe, getting the kids to get up and go find it on a map so that they know where the story happens. It could be talking about the kind of food they eat or what the environment's like. So build that background information before you do anything else. The second thing to make it interactive is to introduce vocabulary. You don't want to be reading a story and the kids not understand the words that are in the story or what that word means. And so I always like to beforehand pull out words that I think my son or my kiddos didn't know in my classroom. I would introduce the word to them. I would show them a picture of what the word meant because sometimes you have to put a picture with it for them to understand what you're talking about. And then I would also give them a movement or a motion to do to represent the word. Let me give you an example. We were reading The Snowy Day, which is a great book about a little boy on a snowy day. And it talks about the snow being piled up. Well, we live in the South, and it rarely snows. And when it does snow, there's not piles of snow. It's just a very little bit of snow. And so for my kiddos to understand what that meant, we made our own snowballs out of paper. We piled them up. So we knew, we had a visual of what piled looked like. And then we had a snowball fight. So we took that word and we had a visual, we had some hands-on. So introducing vocabulary is a great way to get it interactive. Another thing you can get your kiddos to do to make it interactive is say, hey, I want you to listen for the word piled when we read this story. And when you hear it, give me a thumbs up. You don't want them to holler out or anything like that, or yell. We say holler in the South, I'm sorry. You don't want them to yell out, but you could just let them give a thumbs up to know that, hey, we're listening, we're actively listening to the story, and we heard that word. So we want to build background, we want to introduce vocabulary. Those are two great ways to go ahead and get interaction with a story and build connections with a story. Let me make sure. Oh, another way, and I want to go back to this. This is good for vocabulary and building background. It's just doing a picture walk. Before you read any words to your kiddos, take the book and look at the pictures with your kids. Let the kids point things out. Talk about what do they think's happening in the story. Because a lot of times what you think's happening in the story doesn't really go with the words, and so the story's completely different. So go on a picture walk. That's a good way to get the kids excited about the story before you actually start reading it. Now we're going to kind of get into the lower elementary. This is my jam, guys. This is what I loved. So one thing that you can do to make Storytime interactive is to use props. You can find so many things on Pinterest. You can make your own. You can find your own clip art. But let me give you an example. Say, for instance, you're reading Chicka Chicka Boom Boom to your kiddos, where the alphabet climbs up the coconut tree. We love doing this. I would draw a big tree on our whiteboard. I would give the kids magnetic letters, and as the letters were introduced in the story, that child would get up and put their letter on the coconut tree. That's a great way. The kids are sitting there, they're waiting, they're excited, they love when their friends go up and put their letter up, and they're waiting to put their letter on the tree. Interaction right there. They're going to buy into it and they're going to love it. You can do the same thing with Brown Bear by just having the characters on popsicle sticks or just letting your kids hold the characters. The Very Hungry Caterpillar, I had big fruit cutouts with a hole in the middle. I wore a green sock that I made with 2 wiggly eyes on my arm, and as we read the story, the caterpillar would munch through the fruit. So the kiddos holding that fruit would bring the fruit up, I would munch through it, and it would stay on my arm. And in the end, I would turn the sock inside out and it would become a butterfly. So using props makes stories come alive to kiddos. And if the kids get to use the props, it makes it even better. And so you don't have to be fancy. You don't have to buy anything. You can make all of this yourself, or you can even get the kids to help you make the props. We did that for the 3 Billy Goats Gruff and the 3 Little Pigs. The kids constructed the houses, the kids drew their own pigs, and then they were able to act out and interact during story time. If you don't want to make props, let the kiddos be the actors. Another thing I recommend for these lower elementary kiddos to make it interactive is to find books that have repetitive parts in it, parts that the kids can learn and they can repeat in the story. So it could be a story like, we used to read One Duck Stuck, and one of the lines that was always in there is, one duck stuck deep in the muck. And so they could say that with us, and they would sit there and just wait. They knew it was coming up, and they were ready to say it. One of my other favorites is a Halloween story called The Little Old Lady Who Wasn't Afraid of Anything. And it has this great, and it kind of builds up, this great part that the kiddos not only get to say the line, but it has emotion with it, like 2 shoes go clomp, clomp, 1 pair of pants go wiggle, wiggle. And they loved it, and sometimes they would even say it before I got there because they were so excited. So you want to look for things like that where they can participate, and it's not just you doing all the reading or all the work. Also, really, really simple is just change your voice. Make sure that you're showing them the pictures, because if you're holding the book like this, that's totally boring. A lot of times kids need those visuals. Turn that book around, read it, and show the pictures, and change your voice if you can. Talk in a different accent, give different voices to different characters, whatever you can do to make it fun. And don't feel bad if you're not one of these people that like to read aloud, because I know it doesn't come naturally for some people. If that's you, there are great options on YouTube of other people reading these books aloud for your kiddos. So don't feel bad if you want them to hear the story that you look up the video on YouTube. That's totally okay. There's also a website called Storyline Online, and it has a bunch of actors and important people that are reading stories to kids. And it's really fun too, and my kiddos always enjoyed that. So that's kind of for the lower elementary. It's a little tougher to make reading interactive and fun for those older kiddos, or I know it is for my son who's not a huge reader, but I want him to enjoy books anyway. So one thing I like to do when building background and vocabulary is great, but sometimes you've got to hook your kids before you actually read the book. And you could even do this for your little kiddos too. I'm going to give you 2 examples. One of the things that I did, and this was for the lower elementary age group, we were reading The Wizard of Oz. It's when I taught 1st grade. We were reading The Wizard of Oz, and before I even told them what we were reading or anything, while they were out of the room, and you could do this at home totally when your kids are not in the room, I took a witch's hat that I had from Halloween, and I took caution tape, and I laid it in the middle of the floor, and I put the caution tape around the witch's hat. And so when they came back from activity, that's all they could talk about. Why is there a witch's hat on our floor? What happened to the witch? Was there a witch here? Where were you when this happened? You know, they had so many questions. And it really got good conversation started for us to build background and vocabulary and to introduce the story. So setting up a scene, super easy. I used things I already had. Easy. The next thing that I did was for Mary Poppins. If you know, we didn't really love that book that we read at home, but I did set up a scene to kind of get my son hooked. And this is recommended. I'm going to show you where I got the idea. What you do is you type up an invitation or write up an invitation for your kids to come to afternoon tea. But before they can do that, they have to take their dose of medicine. Just like she says, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So you're going to fix small cups of drink. The kids are going to drink that before you start reading the book. They have to guess what it is in the cup, and that really builds their excitement for the story. So setting up a scene is a good thing to do to hook those older readers that may not be so excited about reading, or they do love reading and you just want to do something fun. So let me tell you what I use for my older child. So he's going to be a middle schooler next year, and like I said, he's really hesitant to read, but let me show you what I use, and I love it. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I love the arrow guides from Brave Writer. These are just great ways for you to teach language arts through great literature. But one of the things that I love about the arrow guides is at the very back of the arrow guides, they have something called Book Club Party School, and it's awesome. It's a bunch of pages with tons of ideas to make bringing your book to life. You can do it beforehand, you can do it during, you can do it after. It's totally up to you, and you choose exactly what you want to do. So if you're a parent like me that loves to keep it simple, because that's kind of the way we flow here at our house, this makes it so easy. I can do all the things at the book club party, or I can do none of them. I totally get to decide what to do. So on this, I'm just going to give you some examples. I know you can't see it, but it does give you what you can type up for your invitation and how to have them take a dose of medicine. And then it also talks about hanging a welcome sign and welcoming them to Cherry Tree Lane, which is where the kids live in the story. There's a good idea to dress up like Mary Poppins. Now, you're not going to want to do that every day, but couldn't you do it one day and you could talk in her accent? I mean, how much fun would the kids love it if you read the book like that for that day? I'm not saying do it for a whole week or a whole month, but one day of dressing like a character would be so much fun. It also recommends setting up a scene for London. I thought about having him do like a sightseeing where I hang up the different areas like Big Ben. I think it recommended Big Ben, the Tower of London, the Parliament building, putting them around the house, him going to find them like he's on a sightseeing journey, looking for those things. You could even do like Google Maps where you find these locations on Google. You could look up pictures, go on virtual field trips of these places, bring these stories to life for kiddos. It also recommends having an afternoon tea party, and it'll tell you exactly what to do for afternoon tea. So it tells you what you can have. Of course, you can come up with your own snacks. If it's easier for you to open up brownies and have a Dr. Pepper, you do it. The point is that you're having afternoon tea and you're talking about Mary Poppins. You could even read your chapter for that day while you're having afternoon tea. So there's tons of things in here. This is all about afternoon tea. This talks about a day out where they use sidewalk chalk, because if you know in Mary Poppins, they do these amazing chalk drawings that they can jump into. So letting your kids do that, maybe after you read that chapter, letting them do that. That makes it interactive. That puts them in the story. And that's what's so important. You're making those connections. And there's also some art that's recommended and a game that's recommended. So, you know, you can do as little or as much as you want to. And I always say if there is a book that goes with the movie, make sure you watch the movie too. You want to make as many connections as possible. I hope this was helpful. This is something I'm really passionate about. So if you have any more questions about reading to kiddos or how to make reading fun, or if you want some book recommendations, I love talking about reading. Also, if you have any more questions about Brave Writer or the arrow guides, let me know. I have some other videos on my channel about how we use the arrow guides. So definitely check those out. I had so much fun participating in this collab, and I want to thank Ingrid again for inviting me. Make sure you check out her channel. And as always, thank you so much for watching.